And this meeting is being recorded. So RDA records all its events, and this will be stored for those who can watch it later on the RDA portal. So welcome to you all. My name is Nedjla Retberg. I am based at the University of Göttingen, and I'm working on the EOSC Future project. And I'm here with Hilary from RDA and my colleague Melina from Göttingen as well, to give you an overview of the first call and a context really of why these calls have come about, and a bit of information about future calls that will go ahead. So we'd like this to be interactive, so please keep muted. Do type in the chat if you have questions. There will be time for discussion, questions, and to get your input at the end of the session. But you're also welcome to raise your hand and ask questions throughout. We want to keep this informal, as I said. Okay, Hilary, next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview of EOSC Future, of the RDA Open Calls in the context of the project. Hilary is then going to outline the first call that's currently open, and you can ask questions about that then. And then Melina will then give you an overview and a flavour of what's coming next and where we're going to go this year with the calls. And then there's time to open the floor to discussion. Okay. So next slide, please, Hilary. Thanks. So this is EOSC Future project. It's a consortium of 36 partners plus linked third parties, and it's a mixture of research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, and scientific communities. It's a 3-year Horizon 2020 project, and the aim is to co-design with scientists, with stakeholders, and establish a trusted platform, so to speak, for open data, for fair data, in order to incorporate resources and services from all scientific disciplines. The idea is to seamlessly integrate data and services from a number of different scientific communities and research infrastructures via one system, and then researchers will have access to interoperable resources in order to manage as well the full life cycle of their research data. There'll also be an outreach and engagement program and a training program, and these open calls come under that remit. So that's a quick overview. Can I have the next slide, please, Hilary? By the end of the 3-year project, EOSC Future, in the context of EOSC, intends to provide new opportunities for European researchers, access to interoperable services, resources, and support a more data-intensive and open cross-disciplinary science as well. And the ability of the platform to incorporate complex workflows in order to streamline researchers' work and output. And ultimately, it's about transparent research and fair research, fair data, and fairness of the resources that are being brought into EOSC, and to increase reproducibility of the scientific process. So very ambitious aims there, and that's my attempt to in a nutshell, give you a flavour of where EOSC Future is going. Okay, can I have the next slide? Thanks. So this is RDA. RDA Research Data Alliance. Many of you will be familiar, of course. I don't need to go into great detail of this. And we have Hilary here from the Foundation, the Secretary General of the Foundation, so you can ask questions about RDA at the end. It is a grassroots organization, and it has a large role to play in EOSC and in EOSC Future. It is a huge group of volunteers, and you can see the vast amount of outputs in terms of standards, working group, adoption cases, and has many different members from across the globe. And RDA really facilitates building these social and technical bridges to enable data sharing across many different technologies, disciplines, and countries. So it's a very diverse organization. And can I have the next slide, please? In that context, we are running a program in EOSC Future to roll out a number of different open calls. So we have a budget of $1 million, and this will be rolled out over 3 years in roughly 19 different calls. And the objectives really are to engage different research communities that might not be in the consortium of EOSC Future, engage them with EOSC, and widen the user base of EOSC from the perspective of RDA. So really, as it says there, to enable the integration and take up of EOS services from the RDA perspective, and engage the RDA community via these calls to contribute their knowledge into EOSC, and really to show real life implementation. And you can see that here with these 6 different themes. These are not the names of the calls, these are the kind of the themes. These might change and alter as EOSC Future and EOS develop, as the ecosystem develops. But these are the general areas the calls will be provided in. So you can see technical adoption grants, solutions for interoperability, implementation ideas, but also a human aspect. So setting up working groups to look at different solutions for EOSC, domain ambassadors will have, and setting up communities of practice. So it's a rich program, and it has started now. If I could have the next slide. One of the first calls we've had was for external evaluators. So this is a unique call in the sense this is ongoing throughout the whole of the EOSC Future project. And the idea here is to have a pool of experts that we can draw on to evaluate each of the calls in an intensive way, but to have really the experts in domains and disciplines. And if you could just press the next, this call for external evaluators was opened in June, and it's ongoing throughout the project. So people can still apply. It's not a guarantee or a given that you will be called upon, but then we have a really rich, diverse network of evaluators to draw on to evaluate each of the calls. So take a look. You can have a look here at the EOSC Future funding platform at the top there, and you'll see the call advertised, and you can see more of the details of how to apply. And there on that platform, the future calls will be open. So I think that's sort of the background and the context. Now I'm going to hand over to Hilary to tell you about the first call. Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. So the call that opened in the middle of August and will be closing at the end of October. So this is the first one. It's focusing on optimizing the open science frameworks and guidelines in the context of EOSC. Okay, so the idea, of course, in the context of the European Open Science Cloud and what is being built, of which, or as Nigel explained, EOSC Future is a piece. And here, the Research Data Alliance has over 50 outputs, if not more, in fact, of which many are of value to different pieces of the European Open Science Cloud. So I suppose if we think of the European Open Science Cloud as an engine, so the RDA outputs and recommendations could be the nuts and bolts and parts to that overall engine. And therefore, this call focuses on how to take the RDA outputs and recommendations and how they can be, if you like, re-implemented or put into the context of EOSC and make relevant documentation available. Remember, the RDA outputs and recommendations were drafted by groups of experts, volunteers, open and available to all to then customize, take up and adopt. And that's what we see happening, if you like, here in many different contexts. And the outputs of this call would then be made available, of course, to the community. And we hope that over time, through the different calls and the different grants that we are able to give, to build up a nice repertoire and repository of, if you like, documentation and cases of implementation in the European Open Science Cloud as it progresses over the years, because there's a long-term vision behind the European Open Science Cloud. So we expect these proposals to detail a kind of a future vision of how the community will build on future iterations so they can easily operationalize the framework. So not complex, if you like, but a sort of documenting a case in point or the implementation uptake concepts around these. And there's no particular focus, by the way, on a domain or a specific infrastructure or a particular repository. It's open to all. RDA covers all technologies, all disciplines, as will the European Open Science Cloud. So some examples to try and give you, but this is just examples. I would like to underline that. So analysis of existing technical documentation. So all of the outputs and recommendations of RDA have different, if you like, packages around them. They're all available on Zenodo, by the way, as well as on our own web platform, to see if they are fit for purpose and where they could be optimized, where they need to be, and updates made to them so that they can be more EOSC focused. They were never designed with the European Open Science Cloud in mind, because so they won't make specific reference to that, and that's where we see the value here. Also taking a recommendation, and maybe that has been created, it could be domain agnostic, or it could be discipline specific, taking that existing recommendation, which will of course lead to fair data or open science or open research, because all of the RDA activities focus on that in any case by default, and then taking those and looking to see how they could be taken up and addressing a specific community challenge or anything. Another part, of course, would be the translation of a recommendation into a technical document or a set of, manual, or a set out how future communities can use it. So this is a little bit of an experiment for us as well. We agree that we understand that while as EOSC is the European Open Science is being, if you like, developed and built, it's a sort of a hand-in-hand parallel work. So we will have more, Melina will talk about the number of the other calls coming afterwards, but we'll have more than one, but this is a good, if you like, experiment and start for us to understand, is it focused enough? Where can we improve on it, as well as seeing the first ideas that are coming from it. So each grant will be of €12,500, and they are focused, and the grant can be awarded either to an individual or an organization. But as this comes from European Union funding, we can only give the funding to European-based researchers or people working with, so it's not a nationality thing, it's a residential, if you like, or organizational location, okay? So the call for experts is open to the world, but the calls here, our open calls are open just to Europe. That's the condition of the funding that we have received. They will be, as Najla mentioned before, evaluated externally. This is to ensure openness and transparency and things like that. And there are different criteria, of course, and different focuses for the evaluation. For this particular call, the excellence looks at the vision, there's a commitment to the vision of both EOSC and the FAIR movement, and of course, national open science agendas, because if you are in the landscape and in the playing field around the European Open Science Cloud, there are many different players here, and so we want to ensure that the money is given to something that is committing to those visions. Also, of course, there should be a demonstration of the links with the Research Data Alliance, because this is a specific activity that connects the two. So the Research Data Alliance in support of the European Open Science Cloud. The impact aspects will look towards how this can be carried forward within the context of EOSC and RDA, and then the implementation criteria are around the relevance to RDA, and of course the relationship to and the impact on the European Open Science Cloud. And we do look into we try to assign some balance and diversity to the grants that can be a higher or a lower margin depending on the type of grant. So these are the evaluation criteria for this particular call. And I think I'll leave it now to Melina. I don't know, Najla, do you want people to ask questions about this specific call now, or wait until?
Does anyone have any? I don't see anything in the chat yet. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask at this stage before Melina? Speak up, anyone? Okay, then let's move on. Melina, you present the next calls and the time frame, and then we can talk later.
Okay, thanks, Hilary. Thanks, Najla. Yeah, so the two calls that have been mentioned already, you see on top of the slide, the call for external evaluators and the technical expertise for domain-specific uptake. What I will be talking now a bit about are the four other calls you see below that. And in this overview, you see the calls that are planned to be put out this year still, but there are more calls to come in the next year. If I can have the next slide, please. Yeah, so to give you a bit more detail about the three calls that are planned to be put out this year. So the next call will be the maintenance facilities call, and is focused on supporting maintenance facilities for RDA recommendations and outputs so that they can be persistent and available for implementation and use in EOSC. We've heard before something about the volunteer community of RDA. It creates a significant range of outputs, for instance, tools, standards, or recommendations on a regular basis. And those outputs are used by the global research community. So in order to become a core service for and of EOSC Future, these outputs need to be maintained over time. And therefore, applicants for this call should demonstrate an understanding of maintenance facilities and their requirements, for example, storage and curation solutions. Unlike most of our calls, this maintenance facilities call will be put out only once, awarding one grant of a maximum of 40,000 euros. And the estimated duration of the activity for those for the group that is awarded the grant is 8 to 12 months, with an approximate start date in early 2022. So, and as we heard before, the applications will be evaluated by our pool of external evaluators with insights to the RDA and EOSC. The next call is the one for the domain ambassadors, and it aims to establish a network of experts for EOSC. And we see this as a crucial step for fostering the scientific discipline and domain-specific support and engagement with the goal of explaining and clarifying the benefits of EOS to new and also underrepresented scientific communities. So with their engagement, disciplinary experts and groups do not only contribute to EOSC, but they also bring back benefits to their communities through raising awareness about EOSC and encouraging a wider engagement. So to work towards this direction, the RDA Open Calls program offers up to 10 grants of a maximum of 7,500 euros. And as we can see on the slide, there are 3 phases of this call, with the first one being open soon by the end of September, and the other ones opening next year. The grants that will be put out support work in this area over the entire course of the EOS Future project. And now the last call I will give you some more information about is the call for dedicated community of practice solutions. And this call seeks to support the engagement of new scientific communities in EOSC through dedicated experts. Therefore, both individuals and organizations can apply, and the grants given out for these calls are up to 7,500 euros again. And we plan to give out 5 grants over the course of in each phase, and there are also 3 phases again, spanning over the whole course of EOSC Future. And I think if Najla and Hilary, if you do not have anything to add at the moment, we can open our round for questions and discussions here.
Yeah, thanks, Malene. I think one thing maybe is just to remind people that all of the calls are focused on European. We'll fund European under Horizon 2020 rules. This is a Horizon 2020 project. So we've had some questions, haven't we, Najla, about that, around you know, from the UK or from Switzerland or associated countries. Things are different under Horizon Europe, but these grants are governed by Horizon 2020. It's one of the last grants under Horizon 2020. So, so that's just to highlight, because we cannot accept, because RDA is global and many of the actors involved in the definition of the Research Data Alliance outputs are non-European. Unfortunately, we need them to encourage their European collaborators to leverage these grants for the benefit, if you like, of the work that was done, but it's not possible to put the money across borders.
Although the evaluators, that's the first call that went out, can be based internationally. So
yes, the evaluators can. Yes, and they're the links. Of course, you could send the emails to us now, and we also have the website. So that's where the grant platform is. So it's EOSC Future-grants.eu. And that's where they will find, no? All the
yeah, if you go to the slide before, just go back one.
I will.
Yeah, you'll find via the grants platform, that's how you can apply for the two calls that are open now, which is the evaluators and the one that Hilary's just presented. So that should be perfectly self-explanatory. You'll need to log on and get an account for the grants platform, and then you can put your application in there. And at the end of the month, 2 more calls will be announced with further details pending.
Yeah, I don't think that there are. Did you want me to show more of those slides? The slides will be made available, of course, we can make them available with the recording. But the concept around this info share was also not just to talk about the calls that are open now, but you can ask questions about the ones for the future, but also to give insights or ideas or even questions around the different aspects. So the concept, as just to reiterate it again, is that there's a lot of work done in the Research Data Alliance. The Research Data Alliance is a large mechanism, global mechanism to identify solutions. On the other hand, their European Open Science Cloud is, you know, being built, being developed, being implemented. These avoid the duplication of efforts and use what's out there if appropriate, or develop new pieces that can help. But at one point in time, because science is global, the European Open Science Cloud also needs to be aligned from a technical perspective as well with its counterparts around the world, the other research commons and things. So in designing and implementing it, we need to ensure that there's a lot of fair and interoperable solutions there. And so that's where we kind of come from, a long way off, but where we come from with these calls. But
and I mean, just to say, we welcome your ideas. We have an email address, so ping us, you know, if you have any ideas for how we can develop certain calls, especially with the discipline perspective, you know, how these vertical infrastructures could be supported by a horizontal one, that sort of aspect. So we're open to suggestions and conversations around this. Everyone's very quiet. Well, I mean, if anybody has any, do type in the chat if there's anything that's not clear about eligibility or.
So I suppose we could also say, could you elaborate a bit on the last call? Is it the communities of practice one that you would like us to talk about? You okay? Is that?
Yes. Sorry if I missed it, but is it mostly for scientific, for scientists, for their communities, or is it for also data stewards that can support the scientists?
No, so it's both. Actually, we're quite flexible on that. So, in the context of the communities of practice, they're a specific mechanism in the Research Data Alliance. So RDA, for those who don't know, RDA works in three main ways. We have working groups, interest groups, and communities of practice. Communities of practice are a more coordinating body, and they're very much focused on disciplines and domain-specific activities. But of course, there's a huge data steward, data science, domain agnostic injection required there as well, because we see these communities of practice as the link between the scientists and the researchers doing the work and the data aspects of that particular community. So I suppose the one that we have running at the moment is the agricultural data one, and it's a good example. All the agricultural data, shall we say, community of practice participants are very much wrangling with agricultural data and supporting that so that the agricultural researchers have, the solutions at their fingertips, and they can build the infrastructures and the repositories and all the different aspects for the data life cycle for them so that they can do their research. So in a way, RDA focuses a lot on those middle people, if you like, the data stewards, the data scientists, the people who understand the challenges, to then make the life easier for the scientist and the researcher to be able to make the data fair and accessible and things like that. They do the science, and so it is about supporting also those. I mean, the calls are particularly vague, if I can say that without being in a positive way, though, to allow for creativity and the injection of ideas. We don't know ourselves what EOSC will need as we go forward. The point of this is that the money will not, there's money already in the project for the development for the integration activities. This is a way that the European Commission has given us to inject some spot, if you like, activities to help. So the money is not huge, but the applications are, small. We're not expecting big, long documents or anything in terms of applications, just focusing very clearly on what you want to do. So the domain ambassadors, by the way, and the communities of practice have they could have a good link there. The idea is that we've run domain ambassadors before, but in the context of the European Open Science Cloud, we feel that there are many, many scientific and research communities that are prepared, because there are, there's been a lot of investment by Europe and other countries into their preparation for this, but there are many who are not encompassed by that group. They're not a research infrastructure. Their community may be well organized around data aspects and interoperability and their infrastructure, but they are not aware of what the European Open Science Cloud is. And if this European Open Science Cloud is to be really valuable to those for whom it's being built, it needs to be built with them. So the domain ambassadors are people who understand the challenges and can bring that voice to the table, that can highlight together with ourselves what the challenges are, and ensure that that they're taken into account while designing and building this European Open Science Cloud system of systems, as they call it. Can you briefly share, lots of questions here. You could please speak, okay, can you briefly share what is currently in use and how do you currently manage it? Okay, do you mean in the, Harry, I see you've turned your video on. Would you like to say what you mean, if you don't mind?
That's okay, because I'm in Australia at the moment. And I'm at home, so I'm just letting you know that. The question I have is that what do you have at the moment? Because you're mentioning about this grant on the optimization. So optimized of what? What do you have currently? Do you have any document around it?
Yeah, so we have over 50 outputs in RDA. They're all open, recommendations. So there are many. I give you a few examples. There's a data steward, data science curricula. There are there's dynamic data citation kind of code. There's a metadata directory. They're very varied and very many different outputs. Yes, some are a bit more domain specific, and some are more domain agnostic, or just domain agnostic. They are all available in one form or another from the RDA website, and the idea is to help see how they can be integrated, or changed a little bit, updated to fit into the European Open Science Cloud design. I will say, Harry, it's, and I don't have any problem going on record to say that I know it's a little complex, because what the European Open Science Cloud actually is hard. It's not like you can go out there and see and say, oh, I'll plug something into that. Yes. So this call is a little difficult for us ourselves to understand. We feel, though, that people in the business of interoperability and data challenges would understand about, if you like, the integration aspects or application to their domain and things like that. If what is said is true, then it should be, how would you say, without having the actual design of what the European Open Science Cloud looks like, it should be possible. The idea, because the European Open Science Cloud won't be a one-stop shop or thing, yes? So it's a way of integrating what exists and building on that. So it's hard. We can say from the RDA perspective, I can tell you we have those 50 outputs, and they are, valuable pieces that can be implemented, if you like, into the European Open Science Cloud. But it's for the community to tell us how that is done. And, it could be a trial, and you could get the grant, try it and say, well, actually, this doesn't fit. But that's also a learning experience and valuable feedback for us and for those who developed them in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, sorry, Hilary, there's also the EOS federating call, which is a sort of a concept that's come out of the working group on the architecture. So that could also, how does this align with that? How could these documentations map over, and how would it work in this federating core? Does it work? What are the challenges? Something like that, an analysis of that, because this is a critical part of getting EOSC to work, is understanding the core and aligning standards to it. So I'll put the link in to that as well. It's a new area for everyone, I think, and really trying to interpret how this works is a challenge. So this is also part of it, to get your great minds going on this.
Does that help, Harry, or does it make it more complex?
No, I completely understand where you're coming from, because it's a twofold approach. First is the data itself is very complex. Secondly, when you talk about the research data, it actually adds a complexity. So I fully understand where you're coming from. So no problem. And I think you have answered, and thanks very much for sharing the link. I'll go through the documents, what you have at the moment, and I'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? I mean, I hope this was useful. We're happy to do this, regularly. This is a chance for people to hear what's going on in terms of the calls, and anything that's not clear, we would like to know as well. And
yes, and possibly, I think as we go forward ourselves, we'll understand a bit better when we see the results of this call, no, Najla, and how, we'd be able to give more concrete ideas. That's why we're doing the calls in phases, so that we can build upon the experiences, but also try and ensure more coverage. So now it's anything, any domain, any technology in this sort of the first call, we may need or feel that we want to focus it to a specific domain or a specific challenge as we put out the money. But like €1 million, well, to some is not a lot, to others is a great amount. The grants themselves are small, that we have a limit and they can't be more than a certain amount. But the idea is to just inject, if you like, this this support, and we may change the amount that we give, increase it if it's too slightly small, too little, within the limitations that we have. But we've made an estimate of how we can spend that 1 million over the 2 years to do so. This isn't new, by the way. We had a series of, it's a mechanism that the European Commission likes to, if you like, use. It's a way to give money, as I said, to people outside of the actual, those who sign the contract and are legally and financially responsible for the core work. But we did it for domain ambassadors before it was particularly successful, and they have helped us to explain the complex world of the Research Data Alliance to specific communities. And on the RDA homepage, there's a menu called RDA for Disciplines. Because the Research Data Alliance is a volunteer organization, we rely on the experts actually who work within the context of the Research Data Alliance to help us to explain to the community. So the Domain Ambassadors was a successful one, and we hope that this particular program will be valuable too, and hopefully they will be able to explain to their, if you like, stakeholders how RDA and the European Open Science Cloud can add value to their work. So, you know, we shall see.
Hilary, I have another question.
Oh, yes, I see it. In-house technical architects for high-level blueprint. No, we don't. I'm afraid that's the problem. I think that ties to my last point that it being a volunteer organization, RDA doesn't have any technical expertise, you know, on tap. Now, those who produced the recommendations and the outputs in the first place are often very willing to give more insights. It may not be the case, though, that that specific output or recommendation, the developer or developers of that are aware or understand what the European Open Science Cloud is, because, as I said, many of them weren't designed for it. However, by talking to them, one might understand that actually you know, the solutions that they have, or there is work in towards that area. In terms of EOSC, well, I suppose naturally the EOSC Future technical partners would probably be able to provide some insights if they have the time into, you know, the architecture. They also, in the EOSC Future context, will be running a series of events and info shares around what is the design and the development and the progress, which I think will help to align. But I suppose that's who we could ask. Yeah.
I mean, also the evaluators as well will shed light on whatever is being produced and being reviewed for the calls themselves. So we hope to also draw in technical expertise there, because it'll be a number of evaluators evaluating each call. There'll be a holistic way of doing it. So yeah.
Yes, and that's a very good comment by Sirirat from Elixir, of course, which is a rather well-known and well-established infrastructure, not just in Europe, but across the globe. So yes, and Elixir are particularly active in the Research Data Alliance. I have an interest group, if I'm not wrong, that helped to sort of, if you like, coordinate around for the research infrastructures, or for their infrastructure, the different outputs that RDA, and they do have an Elixir RDA group. So there are many experts. I think the best thing we can say to you, Harry, is, or those of you interested, is to write to us, ask, and we'll try to put you in contact with the people. We're very lucky in the Research Data Alliance. They're a wonderful family, rather large, but wonderful family of people who are really passionately and passionate, I think, about sharing their work as well, because everything in RDA is open. So you do it under those, how would you say, under those guiding principles of openness and to reduce the duplication of efforts. But
And
sadly, we
those-
don't have effort for technical people in the actual core staff of RDA. We're about 4 or 5 people. So we're a small little group.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hilary, there was a question about when the slides will be made available.
Oh,
And
we
the
can make
recording,
it
the
available.
recording.
Yes, we can do that later today and send the message then to the participants. See if that can be done today. Would be a good day. But I would say if not today, tomorrow, you know, latest.
Anything else from anyone? A couple more minutes if there's lots of cooking.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Yes, it's always, if there are people who haven't thought of, but you want to contact us directly, please do.
So can I just ask that if the email what you provide is RDA-open call, is that the email to like have any, if you have any questions to ask on that, or is there any other contact?
That's a
Yes, so
centralized it, yeah.
Yeah, that's the best one for the open calls.
Okay.
Specifically, because we have lots of questions coming in and we're trying to create a series of frequently asked questions then that we will be uploading on the web platform. We also have, for more direct RDA related things, you can write to inquiries, ENQUIRIES, at rd-alliance.org. That's specifically RDA related aspects, and the Secretariat will look after putting you in contact.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. We'll let them go for tea.
Cup of tea.
Tea.
Thank you all for attending. That's great. Okay. I hope it's clarified some things or given you some ideas.
Thanks a lot for the talk.
Mhm.